times they host these things. And one of them looks like it's coming up on a Thursday night. So I might have to cancel class on that night. We'll see. I'm either trying to get out of it or trying to reschedule it, but they move it around to accommodate professor schedule. So it'll be on a Wednesday afternoon, then it'll be on a Tuesday night, then a Friday morning. So it's not always like conflicting with the same, in this case, Thursday night class. So the Thursday night meeting is coming up. So I'll know more on that in a couple weeks here, but just to give you a heads up on that. I'm already prepping the notes for the second half of the semester. I'm getting that ready, working on your training projects, trying to figure out the logistics of that, how we're going to do that. I'm still trying to wrap my brain around that one. So I'll have more on that, obviously, once we get past the midterm exam here. So without further ado, let me get into the notes for tonight. And Chapter 5 concerns training program design. So now we're really getting into the meat and potatoes of training itself. However, there's a whole lot of prep work we have to do on the front end as we're building out this training, and even on the back end. We'll talk about that in Chapter 6 when we get into evaluation. There's stuff you have to do to wrap everything up and put a nice, pretty bow on it. So what are we talking about when I say building the training program? So program design itself, it's the organization, it's the coordination of that training content, the structure, the pacing, who's gonna get it, when are they gonna get it, all of the details that go into training, the training itself. Now we're mapping it out. Now we are finalizing that blueprint and we're going to work. The thing is, a lot of times when people think of training, they think of this right here in the middle, this phase 2, the learning event itself. And I mean, really, that's training. That's what we're here for. But as a trainer, there's stuff I need to do on the front end here in phase 1, pre-training stuff. So we'll talk about that in this chapter. And then here in phase 3, the post-training stuff, we'll talk about that when we get into chapter 6. And then all the phase 2 stuff, the training itself, we've touched on some of that. We'll get into more of the actual training, how to use technology, how to do some of the old school stuff, some legal stuff to take into consideration, so on and so forth. We'll cover that in the second half of the semester. So building out the training program, things that I need to do on the front end, that pre-training stuff, some factors I need to take into account. One of those is the training site itself. Where are we going to do the training? And some organizations have beautiful facilities. Some of the places I've been at are just gorgeous, just jaw-droppingly beautiful, perfect for training in terms of the spacing and the acoustics and the technology available. It makes my life so easy. Other places, it's almost like they stick me in a broom closet. It's horrible. It's loud. The lighting is terrible. There are no outlets or anything to plug stuff in. It's almost an afterthought that, well, we'll just stick you here, do your best sort of thing. So before I do training, I always want to take a tour of the room to see where I'm going to be doing my training. One, to give me a sense of, okay, how is this going to look? How is it going to feel? Where are people going to be sitting? Where am I going to be walking, pacing back and forth, that sort of thing. But also checking the room in terms of the layout, the sounds, the technology available, that sort of thing. I want it to be conducive to learning. I want it to be a comfortable, quiet setting, not a lot of distractions, not a lot of interruptions, again, noise and lighting and all of that stuff. I want to pay close attention to. I almost want to do a dry run. I kind of picture myself, okay, where am I going to stand? Okay, how is this going to work? What is it going to look like? What is it going to feel like? That sort of thing. You really, really, really want to do this at the beginning. You don't want any surprises. And that has happened to me before. When I first started doing this training stuff, I didn't really think about this. I didn't really know about this. And I would walk into a room and I'm like, oh no, where am I going to plug in my laptop? Or, I was going to project something. Where's the projector? What do you mean you don't have a projector? I thought that was assumed. That sort of thing. So what sort of things specifically do we want to pay attention to? Right here, this is a nice little cheat sheet for you. If you are taking a tour of a training room, bring this with you. That's what I do. I make a copy of this, and I use this as sort of a checklist as I tour the room, as I take all of these things into consideration, just to make sure that the room is going to be set up the way I sort of want it to be set up. Like I said, I don't want any surprises. I've done training before, and I've told these people, hey, okay, we're gonna train 30 people, let's say. So I show up the morning of training and I walk in the room and there are 20 seats. And I'm like, wait a minute, we're training 30 people. How are we there's 20 seats? No, we don't have enough chairs or tables. Or tell you what, the other 10 can just sit on the floor and do this. I'm like, what are you kidding me? I mean, things like that. So it's important to go through a checklist like this. And there may be some other things you even think of that you want to take into consideration just to make sure that everything is sort of in its place. And you're going to have a nice environment for learning to occur. I mean, the seating arrangement here in room 108 in the business building, in this room, we have a bunch of individual desks. Now, unfortunately, the table part is attached to the chair. So the two, they can't be separated. It's not like you have a separate seat from the table. Across the hall, in those, it's more of a tiered, a mini lecture hall, I guess you'd call it. There, the chairs and the tables are bolted into the ground. So if I was doing some sort of training where people needed to sort of move around the room and, pick up their chairs or their desks or table or what and get together in small groups, it won't work over there. And, even worse, in a huge tiered lecture hall, well, there's really, I guess you can stand up yourself and physically move your body. That's kind of uncomfortable as people are turning around, talking to people behind that. It just doesn't work if I'm doing some sort of training where I have small group collaboration. Now, if it's just a straight lecture, demonstration, or audiovisual, what have you, then that would work. As a matter of fact, a tiered lecture hall might be better in terms of people being able to see what I'm projecting on the screen at the front of the room. So there are different seating arrangements, obviously, that we can use depending on what type of training you're going to be delivering. So one of the things I take into consideration when I'm looking through all my training materials is how much self-direction is there going to be? How much do I need to be involved as the trainer, as the instructor? How much hand-holding is there? Or is there going to be more the students, the learners, the trainees kind of do a lot of stuff on their own? In terms of the trainees themselves, do they have to get together in small groups and collaborate on things, have small group discussions, work on projects together, that sort of thing? Or are they all going to be sitting nice and neat in a row and just listening to me talk? So the collaboration side of it. So weighing these two factors, in addition to any other factors I could think about, leads me to this, sort of the recommended seating configuration, the suggested training room as it's listed here. So whether I have high or low collaboration, high or low self-direction, there's sort of a better fit in terms of the layout, the design, the seating arrangements of those training rooms. You don't want to square peg, round hole this as much as possible. So that's a big reason why I want to take a tour of that training room before, at least a day before, if not earlier, before I actually go live with my training. In terms of trainee involvement, so something else I want to take into consideration as I'm looking around the room. Okay, imagine as trainees are getting up and moving around or breaking off into small groups, what have you. Am I going to be doing any sort of exercises, role plays, things like that? Is there going to be room to get up and move around without tripping over desks and backpacks and briefcases and that sort of thing? Now, to encourage more training involvement, if that's something that I desire, there are a number of things that I can do, different activities I can come up with. Like I said, role-playing games, different things such as that. At the end of my training, I usually close with, okay, how are we going to use this? How are you going to apply this back on the job? I want them talking to me a little bit more. I don't want it necessarily to be a lot of one-way communication, if at all possible, especially if we're doing like a 4-hour, 6-hour, 8-hour training session. That gets pretty boring in a hurry. Now, why is trainee involvement important to the learning of material and hopefully the eventual transfer of this material back on the job? Shown here, this is sort of training 101 stuff, this learning pyramid. And up at the top, you have the more traditional, more old school, passive learning methodologies. And down at the bottom, you have the ones that are a little more engaging, a little more active. And the idea is that, okay, if I just lecture to somebody, all constant one-way communication, no two-way whatsoever, and all I do is just stand up here and talk, that's it. No nothing. Just me and the sound of my voice. Most people will retain about 5% of that. Now, back in the day when I was an undergrad, I had a professor like that, where it was a huge lecture hall, like 200, 250 students. Professor would come in, open up a notebook, start talking, close the notebook, and leave. That was it. No videos, no PowerPoint slides. Every once in a while, he might write something on the chalkboard behind him, but most of it was just talking. And he really did not like questions. If you had a question, you see him outside of class. That was his time to lecture. And he didn't want to take time away from his lecture to answer questions. So it was quite the grueling class, to be honest with you. But you can imagine if you just sit there and listen to someone for a couple hours, and that's all there is, you start to zone out a little bit, you get distracted, your mind wanders, starts doing other things, and you're not going to remember as much of the stuff that was presented. Now, if I give you something to read, textbook, notes, PowerPoint slides, that sort of thing, that you can take and review on your own time, well, now 10% retention rate. So a little more of that stuff is sticking up here in the brain. If we have any sort of audio-visual stuff, such as PowerPoint slides, that helps. Now we're up to about 20%, so we're getting there. Any sort of demonstrations, if we have, if I have you fill out surveys or questionnaires or do some sort of activities, that sort of thing. If I have you do like a presentation, like your year-end presentation thing where you're actually applying the stuff, you're using it in some meaningful way. Okay, there, now we're up to 30%. In terms of a discussion group now, so if we have a little more back and forth dialogue, 50%. Practice by actually doing, and really with training, this is what we want them to do anyway. We want them to practice what they're doing. So when I coach athletics, I teach something and then we go over it again and again. They actually do it. They demonstrate it for me. So they're 75%. It's one thing to explain to somebody how to hit a baseball. It's another thing to put a bat in their hand and say, okay, go to it. And then finally, 90%, if not more, retention, either using the stuff right away or teaching others how to do it. Now, back when I first started teaching, back in the day, this was when I was working on my doctorate, I did some teaching as an assistantship. So that was prior to 2000. As a professor, I really sucked. Some of you may be thinking, well, you haven't changed much, and you might have a point. But back then, oh my gosh, I feel so sorry for those students. I did not know really what I was doing. Thought I did. Thought I had, I'd gone all the way through so many years of college, got good grades. I'm like, oh, this is easy. And then once you have to teach it to someone else, It's like, wow, I'm not exactly sure how to convey this information. And then somebody in class asks you a question and you're like, oh man, I don't know. I'm not sure what the answer is to that. So you think you know a lot of stuff until the spotlight is put on you and you have to then teach this to other people. You realize quickly what you don't know. So that was quite a baptism by fire for me. And I made it a point to try to get better in a hurry after going through that back. This was when I was in my mid-20s or so. I was teaching already. So the more that you can have people actually physically doing what it is that you're teaching them. So I'm training you to do something and we're going to practice it because this is what you're going to be doing back on the job, the better. And if you can even have them teach other people, and that's why I encourage study groups and peer groups and different things such as that, because you have this network of people that, hey, they look out for each other and they help each other out. I don't know if any of you have ever had a class. I've had one of them. I know some of my students have had classes like this in the past, where the professor divvies up the course and a group of 2 or 3 students are responsible for teaching a particular chapter out of the book. Has anyone ever had a class like that by chance?
Yeah, I'm in one right now.
Oh, you're in one right now? Oh my gosh, what class?
It's healthcare. It's HCA 420 with Dean Robertson.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I know who Dean is. He's one of our newer guys here. So have you taught your piece of the class yet or no?
Yeah, I actually volunteered to be first, so I was kind of like the guinea pig.
All right, good for you. Initiative, bravery. So how did it go? Did you like it or not like it?
I liked it, but I feel like I was definitely the guinea pig because I feel like I just kept on talking and talking and talking. And I went like really long. And then I was kind of like, oh man, I just talked for like 35 minutes.
Yeah, it gets away from you fast, believe me. How well do you think you learn the material or know the material? If I were to quiz you on that right now, you think you know it pretty good?
Yeah, a lot more than what I usually know.
Good. That's kind of the idea here, buying this pyramid. And I would think if you are going to take an exam on all of those different chapters, those questions that are on your material that you taught, you'll probably ace those. And then the rest of it, you're kind of dependent on the rest of your classmates, how well they taught that. I hope they did a good job or you're going to struggle on anything going forward. So it's kind of, it's a little risky because you may get some students who slack off or don't know what they're doing or what, and the whole class suffers as a result. You don't want that. But part of the idea behind that is that bottom part of the pyramid right here, that, boy, if you can master this one small section, make it your own, and then, teach that to other people, boy, that's going to stay with you for life. So good. So anything else on that to add? Or I'm trying to think what else other students have told me in the past about doing that, good, bad, or otherwise. Anything else on that? That's interesting.
Yeah, the only other thing was that, so some people have been unreliable. So like they'll be assigned to a chapter and they won't show up. So then the professor just kind of goes over after the presentations what was missed. So we actually aren't missing out on anything, which is pretty cool.
Okay, good. Yeah, that helps because that's a problem. If the professor says, "Oh well, you're on your own," that's not a good thing. So I'm glad he's at least filling in the gaps there. So good. Anybody else have an experience like that?
I do.
You did? Okay. If you want to share, so how did that go for you?
So it was good. It wasn't a college course. It was youth peer support, train the trainer. And so they were actually, it was on facilitating the group to train people in youth peer support. And at the end of the 40-hour training, they had us take one of the chapters out of the training and then make it our own and then educate the rest of the people in the training on that. And it was a pretty good experience. The biggest thing for me is the time management part of all of that.
Oh, okay. Okay, good. So elaborate on that. I know what you're talking about as a teacher. That's tough. So yeah, what do you mean by that?
So we had about like 8 minutes to briefly go over and summarize not a specific chapter, but like a specific part. So I chose the topic of empathy, and I had to break down, put a PowerPoint slide together. Some of the criteria that the trainer was looking for was, engaging with the trainees, like engaging the audience.
Okay.
And it was over Zoom, so we had to utilize breakout rooms as well.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
there are a lot of variables that, I've been on the receiving side of the information, but never had the opportunity to actually share the information and teach it with others. And so a lot of my struggles came from trying to assign people in the breakout rooms and utilizing the whole facilitating side of Zoom.
Okay, that would probably be my struggle as well. I'm not bad with Zoom, but there's some of my colleagues here who are like masters of this. That are really good with all that stuff with breakout rooms and toggling and all these. I have to kind of think and look around. Okay, where's that button for raised hands and that sort of thing. In terms of time management, that is one of the tougher things I struggle with. Well, not struggle. It's a challenge, I guess, in terms of like a course like this. I have to map out this entire course over 15 weeks and figure out, okay, what am I going to talk about this week? What am I going to talk about next week? Can I fill about an hour and a half, 2 hours? I don't want to go too short. Don't want to go too long. In terms of, maybe getting off track or having a snow day and now we have to catch up somehow. That sort of thing is always difficult to do. And, when someone contracts with me to do a training presentation, I want 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours to look through this binder full of notes and estimate, okay, is this going to fill that allotted time period? So with your training presentations, and again, I'll figure out how we're going to do this. We may not be able to go live with these yet because of COVID, but the idea is, okay, you have 20 to 30 minutes to present this, and that's it. And I've gone on job interviews where it was something similar, where they said, we want you to teach, talk to us about, I don't know, emotional intelligence. And we want you to take 20 minutes. And we'll give you a leeway about a minute on either side. But, sit here for a couple hours, sketch it out, and be ready to go at lunchtime. You're going to teach us for 20 minutes. And so I'm figuring out, I'm like, okay, how am I going to talk for 20 minutes? Not too long, not too short. That's difficult when you're doing something like this. So when you teach, there are all these variables that get thrown in the mix, all the stuff that you got to deal with that maybe you didn't anticipate until you actually run into it. So that's good. So that's interesting. Anybody else? There might have been one more, I think. No, are we good? Okay, I don't see chat or anything. Okay, good. So moving on then, some of as you sketch this out, some of the other things you'll want to kind of make a note of, I'll kind of doodle these in a notepad as I go along, a design document, a training schedule, and a detailed lesson plan. Now the detailed lesson, I encourage you to do all of these. One, the design document and the training schedule kind of lead into the detailed lesson plan. For your training presentation, you're going to be turning in a detailed lesson plan in May. But you start out with the design document. Okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to do it? In terms of the schedule, now you're mapping it out. Okay, the first 15 minutes, we're going to do this. And the next half hour, we're going to do this. And the next 10 minutes, we're going to do this. And then finally, you put it all together in this detailed lesson plan. And the idea behind a detailed lesson plan is it outlines from beginning to end the entire training presentation, who's giving it, what materials you need, when breaks are going to occur, all of that stuff. And not only does that give you a schedule for you to follow as trainers to make sure you stay on track and you're doing everything you're supposed to be doing, but let's say, something happened, I have to give a training presentation tomorrow and I'm sick, or, something happens, I can't make it. I can give that lesson plan to one of my other colleagues. They could look over and be like, oh yeah, I know exactly what I need to do. No problem. I'll take it from here. So it's sort of a recipe of sorts to follow. That, hey, if I can't make chocolate chip cookies, here's the recipe. Can you make them for me? Oh, sure. Okay, here's the ingredients. Here's what I mix when. Here's how I set the oven, so on and so forth. That, yeah, you make it so that anyone can follow that design, that blueprint. So just to give you some examples, some of the content that goes into these different things. So the design document itself, here are the things that you're going to make note of. So as you're designing your training presentations, you just want to sketch this stuff out. And a lot of it is kind of self-explanatory. Obviously, the goal is to teach them how to do something. The audience is going to be this class. Now, you may want to, I don't know, get a little more, I guess, role play like here with, you know, maybe a room full of new cooks or a room full of new bank tellers or, you know, something like that, depending on what it is that you're teaching everybody. But you're going to, you know, write down what you need, who's going to do what, who's responsible for this, that, and the other. I always like making a list of what I need to bring with me. If I need to bring flip charts or markers or tape or, you know, whatever it is, I want to make sure I have that on my list. So before I get in my car and drive to the training site, I go through that checklist to make sure I have everything ready to go. So here's some more details now, filling in some of those blanks, what the design document might look like. Here, as I said, a training schedule. You're going to want times mapped out. And when I do training, I always try to make sure there's a little clock in front of me, or I take my watch off and put it down in front of me, or I make sure there's a clock in the room where I can see it easily, just to make sure I kind of stay on track. Again, I don't want to promise a 6-hour training presentation and get done in 4 hours, nor do I want to get done in 8 hours. I want to try to deliver what it is I promised, try to get as close to that 6 hours as I can. There are times where I'm going to have to slow down a little bit. There are times where I'm going to have to speed up a little bit. If I'm doing training with multiple people, I usually put one person in charge of time, and they are watching the clock religiously. And they are going to keep giving me little hand signals, letting me know if I'm running too long, running too short, that sort of thing. And then I can adjust the pacing accordingly. When I coach sports, when we have practice, I do this for every single practice. So at 6 o'clock, we're going to start stretching and warming up. At 6:15, we're going to start throwing. At 6:25, we're going to do long toss. At 6:45, we're then going to go over and do some hitting. Everything is mapped out. And I know that morning, afternoon, or evening in my practices, I know everything that we're doing for that hour and a half, 2 hours by the minute. I have a watch. I have a whistle. My assistant coaches are on the same page with me. So we can follow our blueprint and accomplish everything that we intend to accomplish that practice. So then finally, the detailed lesson plan. Again, this is what you're going to be turning into me. These are some of the pieces, parts that are going to go into this. So as you look at this, wow, this pretty much gives you everything that you need to know about a given training presentation. Pretty much all the bases are covered here. So here, filling in some of the details. So you have the title of the course. If there's a lesson that this course has multiple lessons, maybe a part 1, part 2, part 3, what your learning objectives are, what you hope to accomplish, who your audience is. Are there any prerequisites? Is there anything that they have to do ahead of time or know ahead of time before taking this particular class or this training session? What is my room seating arrangement going to look like? What sort of materials am I going to have ready for them? All of this right here. This tells you everything and anything related to the delivery, the logistics of that training presentation. So here now, some specifics with what is happening when. and during what time or how long these different activities last, if there are any breaks in here, so on and so forth, that sort of thing. You want to try to stick to this as much as possible when you're delivering a training presentation. An RFP. I have to fill these out every so often, request for proposal. So basically, a Cleveland Clinic, a Progressive, whatever, they'll send out an RFP. Or they'll have this available on their website. We are looking for somebody to teach courses on teamwork or customer service or whatever it may be. Can you do it? Give us your background, your credentials, how much you would charge, what the classes would look like, so on and so forth. And it's almost like a way for them to interview people. It's almost like you send out a job posting. Hey, we have a job opening. If you want to apply for this job, send in your resume. So I kind of send in all of my materials, my background, my Vita, some references, that sort of thing, hoping I get the job, hoping I get picked to be the trainer for a given project. So some of these RFPs may be 7 to 8 pages long. I've seen some, there was one, what was it? One of them I filled out, it was about 40 some pages long. And even, I got one at home somewhere when Amazon was looking for places to set up their second headquarters. They sent out an RFP, and that thing, I don't know, it was huge. I mean, it was unbelievable how thick this thing was for cities to put in a bid for another Amazon site. So all of the different financials, documentation, things that the cities each needed to provide here. So that's what an RFP is all about. That, hey, we want to do some sort of training here. We need a trainer, a consultant, a vendor, whatever you want to call it, somebody to do this or provide materials or whatever it may be. And hey, what you got? We'll send it out there, send out a blast, everybody, and see what comes in, and then evaluate those different proposals. So I filled out a number of these in my lifetime already. I mentioned earlier in the semester the importance of managerial support, and here it is again. It deserves emphasis. So as I mentioned last time, oftentimes when I come into an organization to do training, the managers, some think, hey, good, I got one other person on my side to kick these people's butts. No, that's not what I'm here for. Or I get the managers, they're like, oh, good, I can take a little vacation for the next few days. I'll be in my office if anyone needs me. No, that's not your role either. I need you to help me, support me, motivate these people, reward these people, help train these. I mean, they're all these different roles that you can play to help me here. So what is managerial support? What do I mean by that? I get asked that all the time. The degree to which managers emphasize the importance of attending these training sessions. So you gotta nudge these people into coming. 2, stress the application of what they learned back on the job. So they gotta practice this. They have to actually use what it is I'm teaching them. And 3, give them opportunities to do that practice, to make mistakes, to learn from those mistakes, and not expect, the same level performance, the same numbers as you got previously. Again, there's that learning curve, and you have to allow time for people to sort of figure this stuff out and get used to this new way of doing something back on their jobs. So managers have to understand all of this, and I got to make sure they sign off on this stuff. In terms of the different degrees of support, I guess you could say, at the very low end of this continuum here, at the very bottom, simple acceptance. That, okay, yeah, training's important. Hey guys, go to this training session. Let me know how it works out for you, sort of thing. Not the ideal situation, but I'll take it. As opposed to somebody resisting me, giving me a hard time, Not getting on board with the program, that's even worse. So at least if they acknowledge that, okay, yeah, this is a good thing, it's going to help them, okay, great. To be a little more of a cheerleader, to be positive and encouraging would be even better. To participate a little bit more, that, hey, come join me in the room here, pass out these workbooks, or, as I'm answering questions, if there's something I don't know, can you take a question for me? Maybe it's something more job specific. In terms of reinforcement, we talked about reinforcement theory, operating conditioning, and rewarding desired behaviors, rewarding the right things occurring back on the job, practicing, allowing these people to practice. If they're stumbling through something, helping them out. You are a subject matter expert, so act like one and help these people get the hang of whatever it is that they might be struggling with. And finally, if they can help teach, if they can be sort of a co-trainer with me, oh my gosh, that would be ideal. I would love that. That would be perfect. And some of them enjoy doing that. Some of them, I have no problem getting them to do that. They welcome it. They love being in front of the room with me. They love helping out. And boy, I love working for those organizations. I love doing those training sessions because it's such a breeze. It's a good time. And I know I have someone who is right there along with me through this entire process. So that's a good thing, a positive thing. As much as you can get that, great. Something is better than nothing. But if a manager says, well, what do you mean in terms of my support? What can I possibly do? You're the expert. You're the PhD. You're the trainer. Here's what you can do. I can only do so much. There's a lot of stuff you can do that I cannot do. So that's what I need you to help me with. So I usually have this conversation then with them right before we begin. I encourage managers to develop an action plan. So it's almost like a contract of sorts that you're going to sit down with your employees and talk about training and what it means for them, what benefit it's going to have to them, and you as the manager and the organization as a whole, that sort of thing. We're going to chart out what you're going to do to support them, to give them time to practice, and so on and so forth. We're going to outline how often we're going to check in with each other to see how things are going. We just want to make sure that there's no miscommunication. We're all on the same page, and we get some of the stuff down in writing, because people's memories being what they are, he said, she said, I don't remember that. Let's just make sure we document the conversation, the terms of the agreement here. So an action plan should include these 5 things. 1, a goal identifying what we're going to cover in training, what's going to be used, how it's going to be used, how it's going to be applied back on the job. So that what's in it for me question, why do I have to learn this stuff? 2, strategies for reaching that goal. So here's how we're going to do it step by step. Here's how I'm going to help you and encourage you. 3, any sort of procedures, processes, mechanisms for receiving feedback. So here's how you're going to know if you're doing it right or not, how you know if you're doing well or not. The expected results. So where do we set the bar? Where do I expect you to be by the end of next week, the end of next month, the end of next year? And then finally, a progress check, specifying when we're going to formally meet again to talk about how things are going. Going back to that goal setting stuff. Okay, let's talk about our goals and see where we are toward the progress, that final end state, that ultimate goal, whatever it is. Let's check in with each other every so often and see how things are going. So let's get together every other Friday. We'll make a date. That's it. Every other Friday at 1 o'clock, we're going to sit down and we're going to talk about how training's coming along for you. And if there's anything that I can do as your boss to help you in terms of providing support, resources, removing any obstacles in your way, whatever it takes, let me know. And then I'll do what I can to help. So that's why we do this action plan, to make sure that communication remains open and there is no misunderstanding. A number of organizations nowadays, we talked about that learning organization, the importance of a learning organization, how that's the type of culture we want to create. So a number of organizations nowadays have either a chief information officer or chief learning officer. So you may see some of these jobs open that you can apply for these sometime down the road. That they are the ones in charge of the learning retention, the learning transfer, the storage, all of that stuff. Everything related to training, everything related to learning, that is sort of their expertise, and that is what they are in charge of in the workplace. What else can you do to encourage this knowledge sharing, to encourage this culture of learning? A number of organizations, and these have been pretty positive. As a matter of fact, they even do something like this here at CSU with students and with faculty, is like these lunch and learns, or these brown bags, that brown bag luncheons, that sort of thing. They go by a number of different names, where maybe you went to some sort of training session last week, or I sent you to Dallas or LA or something to go to a conference or a seminar, what have you, and you got a lot of good information. Tell you what, let's all pack a lunch this Friday. Let's all get together in the training room, and I want you to tell us how the trip went or what you learned. Just share with us any insights, any information that you acquired that can help all of us be better. We can learn from you, because not all 25 of us were able to go to that training or attend that conference or whatever, but you did. So at the very least, maybe we can learn a little bit from you. So those, to have that as part of your culture is a really good thing. I found these to be very valuable. To create communities of practice, we've already talked about that in here, where people form their own mini teams, where they talk about how training's going and what can be improved and that sort of thing, where they have each other's backs and they look out for each other. So if you can create these formal task forces, these teams, whatever you want to call them, these groups of people who are sort of the go-between between the rest of the employees and the trainers and the coaches, the managers, all of them, that helps with the communication as well. And the creating that culture where learning is embraced, and we talk openly about these things, even things that aren't working out, things we're struggling with. Let's have an open dialogue about that stuff to make sure that if anything isn't working out right, we can fix it as soon as possible. I always do after action reviews. Sometimes these are called postmortems. Whenever training is done, at the end of this course, at the end of the semester, I'll do one of these where I'll go through everything. I'll go through my notes. I'll go through the discussion boards. I'll go through my exams, everything, and try to figure out what worked, what didn't. What should I keep for next semester when I teach this course? What should I get rid of for the next semester when I teach this course? So it's always good to step back and reassess how you're doing, because there's always room for improvement. So I always want to know, okay, well, what can I do to make this class better? Toward the end of the semester, you'll get, it's all online now, but you'll get a link to do course evaluations. So I encourage you to do those, because I take those very seriously, and I read those again and again and again. I value your feedback, and I want to know, okay, how did it go? What did you like? What didn't you like? What could I do better next time as a professor? So to make that part of the culture in terms of learning, knowledge management, it's not all about the trainees. It's about the trainers as well. It's about the teachers. It's about the instructors. You want them to keep getting better and better as they go along. So that's a big part of what I do every time. Even as a coach, at the end of the season, I assess, okay, what worked, what did, what could I do differently next time to be a better coach for my athletes? And then finally, these chief learning officers, chief information officers, whatever the title is, they do a lot of this stuff where there's a repository, a storage space or storage area for training manuals, policies, procedures, employee handbooks, whatever it is, any sort of knowledge, any sort of learning that takes place, whatever it is, it's all cataloged. It's all documented. Job aids, all of that stuff, anything that's created, it's stored somewhere. It's easily accessible to everybody in the workplace. You now, obviously, you need to let people know where that is. If it's a physical, like a bookshelf, library, what have you, if it's on the company's intranet, where you log in with your, you can only do it in-house, log in with your ID and password, access the stuff, depending on how you set up that access. But you want to make it such that, hey, everyone can learn from everyone else. You're not going to remember everything, so we're going to keep this stuff handy that if you ever need to refer back to it later, you got it. So for this course, all the course notes and everything, you know where to find it. It's all right there. It's not disappearing anytime soon. That stuff, the course notes, the PowerPoint slides that the textbook publisher provided, the ones that I write for this class that I'm sharing with you right now, that stuff will be available year-round. Right now, year-round, course semester, throughout the entire semester round. So if you need to access that stuff at any time, you can. If you need to save it, if you want to, put it on a flash drive, store it on your laptop, feel free. It's yours. I have no problem with that. I encourage you to take this stuff. And maybe you're not using it tomorrow or next week at work, whatever. Someday you might. And so it's just one more source of information that a year or two from now, you may be asked to do something. You're like, wait a minute, Dr. Topher taught me. Now, let me see. I got my notes here somewhere. You can look it up and boom, it comes right back to you. And you can then follow through on whatever it is that you're asked to do. So that is it for chapter 5. So it's about 10 till right now. So let's take a quick break, about 5 minutes or so. We'll do a little bit of chapter 6. I'll see how far we get with that, and then we'll wrap it up for the night. All right? Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right, so let's take about 5 minutes or so, get up, stretch, and we'll come back together in a little bit. All right? folks, are we ready?
Yep.
All right, I'm just gonna get through some of Kirkpatrick, at least the first 4 levels of his model here tonight. And we'll just end class a little bit early here. Unless there are any serious protests to the contrary, I figure that'll be okay with all of you. So here we go. So chapter 6 deals with evaluation. Big part of what I do as a trainer. I'm a stats guy. So I'm a data guy, numbers guy. So I'm meticulous with the data that I collect related to my training programs, the evaluation of my training programs. Now, when we evaluate training, there are a couple different ways we can do this. One is through what's called a formative evaluation. Pilot test, beta test, same thing. So as we're putting this thing together, we're rolling out a little bit, we're trying it out, seeing how it's going. Maybe it's a training program we're going to roll out to like 1,000 people. So I'm going to start training about 15, 20 people and see what they think of it. So they're going to be kind of my guinea pigs initially. See how it goes, see what works, what doesn't, and they can give me a lot of feedback that I can then use to make tweaks to that training program. So when we roll it out company-wide to all 1,000 people, it's a little more of a well-oiled machine. So as you can imagine, this is based a little more on qualitative data. So give me your thoughts, give me your input. Let's do a little focus group. Let's put stuff on the whiteboard here. What do you think? What was good? What wasn't good? So just to make sure that we get all the bugs out initially. So we're kind of building the airplane as we're flying it here, sort of, where it's not the finished product just yet as far as a training program goes. It's still in its early testing phase. Now, when we're done with our training and we really want to know, okay, did it work? Did it not work? Collecting some more quantitative data, then we're talking about a summative evaluation. So the formative evaluation, it's a little looser, a little more informal. This one is a little more serious, a little more hardcore, a little more specific in terms of what data I'm trying to collect and why I'm trying to collect it. So when we talk about evaluation, especially summative evaluation, we have to mention Donald Kirkpatrick and his model of training program evaluation. So Kirkpatrick said, hey, if we're going to evaluate whether or not a training program was good or not, there are 4 things we want to focus on, 4 key areas shown here. We'll call them levels. So level 1, trainees' reactions to the training program. Level 2, did they learn anything? Level 3, did their behavior change as a result? Or are they transferring the stuff back on the job? And level 4, what benefit is it to the organization? So those are Kirkpatrick's 4 levels of training evaluation. So level 1, reactions. Before trainees go back to their jobs, I want to ask them, hey, what do you think? What did you learn? Do you have fun? Was this worth it for you? Would you take another training class with me? Those sorts of things. At the very least, this is that hard to do. This takes very little effort, very little time, very little money, just to get some feedback, just to get a little bit of a reaction, hence the name, level 1 reaction phase here, from your trainees. So in this class, I collect level 1 evaluation data. So what specifically is it that would qualify as trainee reactions in this class? What is it that I do? Anyone? Course evaluations. Your course evaluation is a level 1 evaluation. So at the end of the semester, CSU will ask you, hey, what do you think of Dr. Toper's training class? Now, it's good to know that information. I like knowing whether you like this class or not. However, it only gives you part of the story. So you may say, hey, yeah, I love Dr. Toper's class. Oh, why so? Oh, because every Thursday night I could get a nap in from 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock or so while he's, yammering on here. So, yeah, I guess that's good, but I kind of want a little more out of it. I don't want this to be nappy time for you here, if that's what you're using the class for. So it's the data, it's only so useful. Now, it does have its place. It does have a purpose, but it is just a small part of the larger puzzle here. You could have had a great time in this class, but you didn't learn anything, and you're never going to apply this stuff ever in your life. Well, that to me is a failure then, mostly on my part. Maybe you shouldn't have taken this class. Maybe you got steered in the wrong class. Maybe this isn't in your major. Who knows? Maybe we need to find out, okay, well, where's the disconnect? What happened here? But at a minimum, I like to know, okay, did you enjoy it? Was it fun? Was it worthwhile? Would you take another class with me if offered the opportunities to do so? So that's a level 1 evaluation, your reactions to the training, your reactions to this class. Sometimes called smile sheets. These are the customer comment cards where you have the 4 or 5 smiley faces. Circle the one that is most applicable, or check the one that is most applicable to this situation, to your experience here today at XYZ store, whatever it is. Again, a positive response is good. That's what I want, but it can only go so far. Yeah, you had fun, but I'm hoping you get a little bit more out of this class than just fun. So these are the kind of questions you want to ask in a level 1 evaluation. Did you enjoy it? Was this relevant in your opinion? Now, this is all very subjective stuff. So this is a good use of your time, participation level, practicality. How likely are you do you think you're gonna apply this back on your job? That's all that. You could be completely lying to me. You may have no clue. I want to at least get some sense of what you're thinking, what the vibe is in the room, in the class here. So it has its place. It's good to do, but I want to get more out of you. So I'm going to go to a level 2 evaluation. Learning. Also collected before you return to your job, or in this case, before the semester ends. I want to know whether or not any of this information stuck up here in your brains. Now, this takes a little more time, a little more effort to collect this data, but it's also richer. It's more valuable. It tells more of a story. So in this class, I am also assessing level 2. So what do you think I'm using to assess level 2, your learning in this class?
Homework, quizzes, tests.
Good. Any quizzes, tests, homework, that sort of thing. So on the midterm exam, on the final exam, I will be asking you questions from the book, from the PowerPoint slides that the publisher gives us, from my own slides that I wrote here. And I want to know, hey, did you pay attention? Did you read this material? Did you study it? Did you kind of make it your own so it stays up here in your brain? And you could say, oh, yeah, I learned, I paid attention in class, I studied. Oh, really? Well, let's verify that. Here's an exam. Prove it to me. That's level 2 evaluation. That's learning. And when you teach somebody something, They may say, oh, yeah, I got it. Yeah, I learned. Yeah, I paid attention. Yeah, I understand it completely. Prove it. Put it to the test through use of a test. That way you know, hey, did they really learn, or are they just BSing you here? Different ways we can do this. Formal testing, informal testing, asking supervisor, their reports and different things that they're, assessing whether they know this stuff or not. Even a sort of self-assessments. There are different ways to do that, self-quizzes and things like that. With different learning management systems and things like that, people can get online and take these little self-quizzes, and I can see the results and see if they're learning this stuff. Now, sometimes you take these online things and they won't let you move on to the next module until you get a certain score on the previous module. So you have to master chapter 1 content before moving on to chapter 2. And then you have to master that content before moving on to chapter 3. Well, the way to show that you master that is you take a little self-quiz, a little online quiz to prove it. Ideally, what would really be nice is if I could give you a pre-test and a post-test. Now, that would really show what you learned and hopefully what impact I had on your learning. So imagine the first day of class, I put together a little exam. And I have questions from the midterm exam and questions from the final exam. Say, hi, class, welcome. MGT 343, I'm your professor, Dr. Toper. Here I have a quick little assessment I want you to all take. And I ask you 20, 25 questions, see how you do. And then as the semester goes on, I have my lectures, I have my notes, you have the book, all of that stuff, syllabus, what have you. We take our midterm, take our final, and then I compare those, we'll call them post-tests, with that earlier pre-test and see how you did. And maybe I'll look at the same 20, 25 questions. And I could go to you and say, wow, look at all of you. The first day of class, the average score on this test, this pre-test, was a 3. Now, if I look at those same items on the post-test, the average score is a 22. You went from a 3 to a 22. What was different in between those two? Oh, I know, this class. So look, where you started out down here, and now you're all the way up here, as a result of these 14, 15, 16 weeks together. So that's level 2 evaluation. So if you can do a pre-test, post-test type thing, that really sells the impact of your training. So we're asking them, or we're not asking, we're trying to answer these questions somehow through data collection. So did they learn what they're supposed to learn? Or did they experience what they were supposed to experience? If it's diversity training, sensitivity training, that sort of thing. Level 3 evaluation. So now we're getting even more intense with our assessment of what really went down in this training here. After trainees go back to their jobs, I want to know, hey, you know all that stuff I taught them a couple weeks ago? Are they using it? Are they doing that stuff? Do you notice any differences in their behaviors on the job? So I'll ask their coworkers, their bosses, the floor shop manager, whoever it is, to give me some insight into, hey, I noticed they are doing things a little bit differently. That's what we want. So whatever I taught them in the classroom environment, did it stick to the point that they're using it back on their jobs? Transfer of learning, transfer of training. We already talked about that in here. And to a number of trainers, this is the truest evaluation of a program's effectiveness. So if I'm teaching you how to hit a curveball, let's say, I could lecture you. I could, go through demonstrations with you, and you're like, oh yeah, Dr. Toper, yeah, this is fun. Yeah, I got it. I know how to do it. That's not enough. Tell you what, practice right now. Let me throw you some curveballs, see if you can hit it. Okay, well, in a more controlled, a safer environment, yeah, you can hit the curveballs I'm tossing it to you. Great. What I want to know is if we're in a game, an actual game against an opponent, a pitcher who's trying to strike you out and they throw you a curveball, what are you going to do? How are you going to respond? Can you hit that curveball in a game situation? Did you change your footwork, your handwork, your hips, whatever it is that we're working on? You're applying it and doing the right things, and you're making contact with that curveball. So with trainees, I teach you all this stuff in the classroom. We practice it. We rehearse it, whatever. You go back on the job. I leave. I'm gone. I'm on to my next gig. But I check in a couple weeks later and I'm just kind of curious, hey, what's going on? Ever since I left, what are the employees doing? Are you using that stuff? Are you applying that stuff that I taught you? Are you putting it to actual use? Now, this is tough to evaluate. You really have to be you have to get cooperation from people. You have to be in the right place at the right time. It may be one of those things where I'm teaching you how to hit a curveball. We're at a game and you strike out on the curveball. I'm like, oh man, next game you do it again. Darn it, you are never going to get this. Boy, and the next game I'm sick, I couldn't make it, and all of a sudden you connected and you're hitting that curveball over the fence. And I wasn't there to observe. You never know when this change is going to stick, when that behavior is going to change. That's part of the problem. You got to be in the right place at the right time. Everything has to sort of come together for this magical event to happen. And I may be asking supervisors, I may be doing my own observations of people on the floor, and I'm like, oh man, they're not using any of this stuff. I thought I had them. I thought I taught them the stuff. I thought they got it, so on and so forth. I leave the next day, all of a sudden it clicks and they start doing it. And this happens with all of us. That there's just, for some of us, we get it right away, and other people, it takes them a little more time or a little more practice, or it's just something doesn't click right away and there's a little bit of a lag, and all of a sudden, boom, they got it. But I may not be around to see it, or your supervisor may not be around to see it, so I may chalk it up as a failure. So that's one of the problems, that you have to get a lot of data, a lot of observations, a lot of interviews from people to ask them, okay, did they change it? Are they doing this stuff? Are they applying the stuff back on the job? You got to keep collecting that data over and over and over, because no two people are alike. And half the people may get it right away. The other half, you're going to have to give them another week or two till they feel comfortable applying this stuff back in the workplace. So these are the kind of questions that I'm attempting to answer at this level. Did they apply what they learned back on the job? Was it noticeable? Was it measurable? Any variations of this question. Are they using it? Are they transferring it? Are they aware that these changes, that they're doing something different? However, whatever angle you want to take to get at this, you just need to answer that question. Did transfer occur? Did transfer of training happen from the learning environment to the work environment? Level 4, results. Bottom line. This is why I was hired. This is why I was brought in by the CEO, by the vice president, whoever it is. We want to improve productivity. We want to enhance safety. We want to decrease errors. Whatever it is, did that happen? So I train all of these people. They go back to their jobs. They're doing something different. Did it have an impact on the organization? Did something change in terms of overall organizational success, or whatever metrics they're using to track that success, whatever it may be? So this is to those people who hire you, who bring me in. This is why training exists, because I want to fix something in the workplace. Yeah. The trainees, they had fun. Yeah, they learned something. Yeah, they're doing it back on their job. Whoop-de-doo. I'm running this organization, and I have to, talk to my stakeholder, my shareholders in another week. Am I going to have good news for them? What am I going to tell them? I hope it's a positive. So your training, was it successful? How do you know? Show me. So that is what you have to do as a trainer to deliver on this level 4 evaluation stuff. Now, hopefully, a lot of this stuff, because they already noticed there was a problem, they might be collecting a lot of this data already. So maybe it's accident reports, productivity metrics, waste metrics, whatever it may be. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. They're already tracking this stuff on a regular basis. So you're just looking at sort of the before and after. Before you arrived, when they knew there was a problem, and then after, once your training is done, did those numbers improve somehow? The thing is, a lot of people with data, they collect all this data and they're not really sure what to do with it or what it means. So if you have a good stats background, that helps you sort of sort through the trivial stuff and the unnecessary stuff to get at the numbers that are the most meaningful to you as a trainer and the organization as a whole. Now, this is one of the conversations I like having with these top people early on. In terms of success, well, what does success look like? What do you mean? What are you talking about? How will we know it when we see it? So I want to make sure, again, miscommunication, we're all on the same page. We're all looking at the same metrics. We're all interpreting those metrics the exact same way. So why am I here as a trainer? What do you expect me to do? And how am I going to know if I'm successful? Tell me, what are you looking at? Again, we got to make sure we see eye to eye on this stuff. Finally, and this is kind of an add-on to Kirkpatrick's 4 levels. At the beginning of these PowerPoint slides, you saw that little colorful pyramid and there were 4 levels. But wait a minute, level 5, that wasn't on there. What the heck? What is going on with this? Level 5, ROI, return on investment. Some folks, including Kirkpatrick himself in later years, right before he passed away, added a 5th level to that pyramid. And basically what he did is he took that 4th level and split it in 2. So there's still a results section where you talk about increased productivity, increased safety, decreased waste, whatever those numbers are. But level 5 then puts it into dollars and cents terms. So if our productivity went up by 22%, what does that mean bottom line dollars and cents? If our accidents went down 82%, what does that mean in terms of dollars and cents? If our waste is down 17%, what does that mean in terms of dollars and cents? So this is when the CFOs, all the finance, all the accounting people come in and say, okay, hey, we paid you $20,000 to deliver this training. What did we get for our bucks? What is our return on investment? Oh, well, yeah, you paid me $20,000, but with this improvement, now you're saving $50,000 per year. Ooh, okay. They understand that language. The CEOs, they understand one language, productivity numbers, quotas, things such as that. The finance and accounting people, they understand a different language, dollars and cents. So it's important to have both of these conversations with them. And that's why Kirkpatrick and others said, you know what, that level 4, we can tease out some of the dollars and cents stuff. We can still keep the results stuff and use that language. But then with these other folks, we have to have a separate conversation talking about bottom line dollars and cents. So in practice, this all sounds really cool on a PowerPoint slide. Let's talk about reality. What do most organizations out there, the real world, what do they do? So a survey done a little while ago, I'm trying to think how many years, it's been a few years now. Although it wouldn't surprise me if these numbers, if you ask today, you'd get similar results. Number of organizations, they surveyed them. Using Kirkpatrick's, let me explain these different types of level, these evaluations. What do? When you deliver training, do you do the smile sheets? Do you do the pre-test, post-test, all that stuff? Tell us. So the results, 92% of those organizations surveyed do the level 1 stuff, the smile sheets, the reactions. Okay. 81%, the cognitive, the learning, the behavioral, the brain, did it stick up here stuff. 55%, the behavior stuff, the transfer. 37% only looked at the level 4, the results. Only 18% translated that into dollars and cents. And 4% said, Kirkpatrick evaluation, what are you talking about? Never heard of it. Oh my gosh. As I said at the beginning of the semester, I'm still to this day surprised how many organizations spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on training, on sending their employees to conferences and seminars, tuition reimbursement, all these different things related to that learning and development package as part of the benefits that they offer their employees. And I ask them, well, what's working for you? How do you know it's working? And they're like, oh, what? Huh, what? I don't know what you're talking about. Oh my gosh. So you know, maybe you do this diversity training, let's say. You keep preaching how, boy, you have this great diversity training program here at your organization. How effective is it? How well does it work? How do you know it works? Oh, we don't, but we think it works. You think it works, but you don't know it works. You have nothing to back this up, or you keep doing it again and again. And don't get me wrong, I'm on board. The spirit of it is good, but how do you know you can't make it better? You know, maybe this is, in terms of diversity programs, this is the worst one in existence. You would never know. You have no clue. You have no idea. So I always build evaluation into my training design for that reason. I want to answer these questions. I want to be able to prove that what I did has merit, has value. I need to be able to show that, yeah, you're not just paying me all this money to show up and do this dog and pony show. I'm actually making an impact in your organization, and I hope you're going to hire me back. And some organizations will just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, and they have no idea whether or not it even works, whether or not this stuff is even effective. And that's almost negligent, in my opinion. I mean, by all means, keep spending the money, but you know, when budgets start getting tight and you have to start cutting back, I like having a little more data at my disposal to know where I should be cutting back. And training evaluation can go a long way toward helping you make a more informed decision. So John, you have your hand raised. So what can I answer for you?
I was just wondering what your thoughts were on why don't organizations really follow through and evaluate all the levels of Kirkpatrick's framework, because it kind of seems like a great way. Go ahead.